Greetings, Pipeliners. This is Ryan here, coming to you today with not a writing or grammar lesson, but rather a contracts lesson. Today we're going to be talking about the statute of frauds. The statute of frauds is a legal doctrine that you will be studying pretty thoroughly during your first semester of law school. But we wanted to give you a preview of it and then do some hypotheticals with it while in pipeline, because we feel it's a doctrine that can be condensed into a smaller piece. And it's good to give a heads up as to what's to come next. So many of you probably have heard the idea that contracts don't have to be in writing. You know, that all you need is a handshake and the trust between parties, and at someone's word, the contract has been formed. And in many instances, that's correct. You know, that can be very true. You can be held to liable, or you can held to be responsible for a verbal contract. But there are certain circumstances when the verbal contracts are not sufficient, when the contract has to be in writing. And those contracts fall under the statute of frauds. So we're going to talk a little bit about why it's good to have contracts in writing, and then we'll talk about what specific kinds of contracts will be in writing, have to be in writing. So the first benefit for the writing is that it serves a cautionary function. So it gives a heads up to the parties in the agreement that, hey, you're entering into an agreement. It's a pretty important one, and it's important to know all the terms so that you have a good idea of what you're getting yourself into. It's also important as an evidentiary function, so that when you get into court, if there's a problem with the contract or a problem with the deal, you can look at the contract. With verbal contracts, while they are enforceable, they're much harder to enforce because of the lack of evidence. You know, unless there's a recording or something like that, it's difficult to really prove what was said. There's ways to go about that, and you'll learn about that your first semester of law school. But if the contract was in writing and you all agree to that, well then, you know, it just some really strong evidence of what you all agree to. It also serves this channeling function, so it kind of brings everyone onto the same page, and it cues everyone into the importance of this contract, and it makes sure that when really important deals are going down, that folks are channeled into the judicial strategies and the judicial structures and infrastructure that's in place, so that people all over aren't making contracts that have pretty grave consequences. Judicial efficiency, and this is something you're going to hear a lot in law school. Saving judicial resources is an always important policy implication. And so similar to the evidentiary function and the channeling function, courts like contracts because it makes their job a lot easier. They don't have to sift through a lot of evidence about what the contract said if they have the contract in front of them. So you know, it saves court time, it saves legal time, it saves everybody time, which is, you know, time is money. So what kinds of contracts are required to be in writing? And I have a list of them here, and then there's a real famous mnemonic that you will learn next year in law school, but we'll give you a heads up for it now. So the 6 kinds of contracts that are required to be in writing are, number 1, a contract made to pay someone else's debt. So if you go into contract to pay for your buddy's debt to the lender, well then that contract has to be in writing. And just a heads up, the letter K you will learn is shorthand for contract. Number 2, the contract by the executor of a will to pay a debt of the estate with his own money. Number 3, a contract made in consideration of marriage. Number 4, a contract for the sale of an interest in land. Number 5, a contract that cannot be performed in 1 year. That's a real important one. And number 6, a contract for the sale of goods for $500 or more. So $500 or more isn't all that much. Maybe back in the day when this doctrine was first created, $500 was a lot, but today it's not that much. So there you go. And important, the idea of goods. A good is a movable object. So contracts, study statute of frauds, and the famous mnemonic. So my legs is the mnemonic. Marriage, so contracts made to consider marriage, is the M. Y is year for contracts that cannot be completed within a year. Land, executor, goods, and surety, and that was the contract to pay for your buddy's debt. So we talked about mnemonics a little bit in an earlier class, and this is a perfect example of the role that they can play in terms of your learning and your memorization and your test preparations. So if you go into a test and you have that mnemonic and you can briefly jot it down, especially if you think it's a statute of frauds, just write it down real quickly, and then you'll have it right there. So the statute of frauds is this balancing test, and really, again, much like judicial resources, this is a theme that is going to come up throughout your law school career and your legal career. It's a constant balancing test between the state's interests and the personal interests, and the courts want folks to be able to enter into contracts fairly easily, so that the economy can function properly, so that goods can be transferred from one to the next, and that we have a robust, powerful economy. But we also need to have certain formal structures put in place in case something goes awry. So that's the statute of frauds, by requiring written contracts for just those 6 subjects, tries to strike this balance between the two. The balance between honoring the desire for formality, so the need to have some kind of written contract, but also loosen the formalities so that folks can participate in the economy, and so that people aren't kind of screwed over, which can sometimes happen too. So that's all I have for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this, and please come to class with any questions that you might have. Look forward to talking to you soon.